My name is Margaret Elaine Turner, and I was 27 years old. The Christmas I finally realized that being quiet in my family was never a personality trait. It was a survival strategy. I had lived in my childhood bedroom long enough for it to stop feeling temporary. The pale walls still carried the faint outline of posters I'd taken down years ago. The desk by the window bore scratches from late nights hunched over my laptop building, something no one downstairs knew existed. The house creaked the same way it always had, settling into itself at night, like it was sighing in relief that nothing ever really changed here. From the outside, it probably looked pathetic. A grown woman still living at home, still typing away in the same room she'd done homework in as a teenager. From the inside, it felt different. Controlled. Quiet. Mine. Growing up, I was never the problem child. That would have required attention. I was something easier to overlook. My older brother, Daniel Turner, was 2 years ahead of me and worlds louder. He knew how to occupy space physically, emotionally, socially. Varsity sports, debate team, pre-law internships by sophomore year. He collected achievements the way some people collect souvenirs. Proudly. Publicly. Family photos always centered him without discussion. I was the one half a step to the side smiling because smiling was expected, not because anyone asked how I was doing. Our parents loved us both. I believe that. But love in our house was filtered through accomplishment. My father, a lawyer, spoke in metrics, titles, earnings, trajectories. My mother hosted charity events where everyone smiled warmly while silently ranking each other's worth. Our dinner table wasn't a place for honesty. It was a place for subtle assessments. No one yelled, no one cried. They just remembered everything. Daniel moved out the second he could. Law school, marriage, a wedding so elaborate it felt like a press event. I wasn't asked to speak. I sat near the back, close to the restrooms, pretending not to notice my name misspelled on the seating chart. They divorced 3 years later. Daniel recovered the way he always did, quickly cushioned. When he needed a new car, my father co-signed. When he needed a place to stay, my mother offered the guest room without hesitation. When I graduated college, there was no party, no banners. I walked across the stage, accepted my diploma, and went home. And I stayed. Not because I had nowhere to go, because I had somewhere to build. I'd been freelancing since junior year. Small projects, quiet clients, steady growth. I liked working with code because it behaved logically. You put in effort, you got results. No favoritism, no politics. After graduation, I poured everything into a productivity platform designed for creative freelancers. Nothing flashy, just clean systems that solved problems I'd lived with for years. I funded it myself. No investors, no mentors, just discipline and a lot of sleepless nights. At first, I didn't even name it properly. I never told my family. I already knew how that conversation would go. Daniel would smirk. My father would ask when it would become a real business. My mother would smile politely and change the subject. So I let them believe I was just upstairs fiddling with my laptop, still figuring myself out. In reality, I was running a company. 2 remote contractors, 6-figure contracts. Users I'd never met who relied on what I'd built. But once people know you've made it, they don't see you anymore. They see leverage. That Christmas felt familiar in all the ways that mattered. The house glowed softly white lights lining the windows. Classical music hummed in the background. My mother brought out the plates with gold trim, the ones we weren't allowed to touch the rest of the year. My father wore his usual green sweater, the one that made him look like a law firm holiday card. Daniel arrived late as always. He swept in, wearing confidence like cologne, followed by his new girlfriend, Rebecca Collins. She was polished in a way that suggested intention. Every movement deliberate, every smile measured. Daniel introduced her like she was proof of something, like her presence validated him. Dinner began with gratitude the way it always did, each person listing accomplishments disguised as thankfulness. When it was my turn, I paused and said, "I'm thankful for the people who believe in me." The silence stretched just a second too long. My father chuckled softly. "Still chasing that little online hobby, huh?" Daniel smirked. "She's still in her childhood bedroom, if that tells you anything." I felt my fingers tighten around my fork, not because it hurt, but because I'd heard it so many times it felt rehearsed. Rebecca didn't laugh. She leaned forward slightly. "So, Margaret," she asked, "what do you do exactly?" I opened my mouth to answer vaguely software freelance, nothing worth explaining. Before I could, Daniel waved a dismissive hand. "She calls herself a founder." Rebecca's eyes stayed on me. "Founder of what?" I hesitated, then said quietly, "A productivity platform. for creative teams. What's it called? No box. Her expression changed instantly. Wait, she said slowly. Are you that Margaret Turner? Every fork froze. Glasses hovered midair. Our entire team uses that platform, she continued. We thought it was some funded startup out of San Francisco. I met her gaze and nodded once. I built it. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was seismic, the kind that shifts power without anyone speaking. Daniel stared at me like I'd broken a rule he didn't know existed. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I didn't gloat. I just took a slow sip of wine and let the truth sit where it landed. And across the table behind my brother's smile, I saw something crack. Not pride, not surprise, something darker, resentment. And that was the moment everything truly began. The air in the house never fully recovered after Rebecca recognized my app. Dinner technically continued. Plates were passed, wine was poured, someone commented on the weather, but everything felt slightly off, like the room had shifted a few inches to the left and no one wanted to acknowledge it. My father kept glancing at me, his expression tight, analytical, not proud, not impressed, evaluating. My mother tried too hard to keep the conversation flowing, offering Daniel more gravy twice, even though he'd already said no. Rebecca watched me with open curiosity, now the kind that made me uncomfortable, not because she was rude, but because she was genuinely interested. Daniel barely spoke. That alone should have warned me. After dinner, I helped clear the table like I always did. Old habits die hard. Rebecca joined me in the kitchen, while my parents lingered in the dining room. I had no idea, she said quietly, handing me a stack of plates. That platform saved our team last year. I smiled politely. I am glad it helped. Daniel appeared in the doorway, then arms crossed. You didn't mention you were successful. The word sounded strange coming from him, like it didn't belong in the same sentence as my name. I didn't think it mattered, I said. He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Of course it matters. That night, lying in bed, staring at the familiar cracks in my ceiling, I felt something I wasn't used to feeling at home. Unease. Over the next week, my phone buzzed more than usual. Not from users or contractors, those I'd learned to manage, but from family. My mother texted to ask if I wanted to join her at the farmer's market. My father casually asked what kind of income range a business like yours might generate. Daniel sent a message with a selfie of him and Rebecca at a restaurant captioned, "Dinner with the No Box Fan Club." I didn't respond. I'd spent most of my life trying not to be noticed. It wasn't humility, it was protection. When you grow up learning that attention comes with conditions, you learn to stay quiet. But suddenly, I was being watched. At first, it was subtle, my mother asking if I needed anything for work, my father mentioning tax efficiency at dinner, Daniel calling one evening just to check in. He hadn't checked in on me in years. You ever think about scaling? He asked casually over the phone. Like really scaling. I already am, I said. Sure, he replied quickly. I just mean structurally, legally. That word stuck with me. Legally. The real shift came in February. My parents were hosting a small gathering for my father's birthday. Nothing major. Just a few family friends, catered food, wine that cost more than my monthly utilities. I almost didn't go, but my mother guilted me into it, saying it would mean a lot to my father. So I showed up, clean blouse, polite smile, bottle of wine. I blended into the background like I always did until Daniel arrived. People noticed him immediately. They always did. But this time, he made sure they noticed something else. As he greeted my father, he lifted his wrist casually. A smartwatch flashed to life, displaying a familiar interface. This thing, he said loudly enough for the room to hear, tapping the screen. Game changer. Margaret's platform. You all know she built it herself, right? The attention snapped toward me. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible. I was interesting. My father laughed a little too loudly, clapping me on the shoulder like we were colleagues. My mother beamed. Daniel smiled too, but it was tight controlled. Later that evening, I went into the kitchen for water and stopped short when I heard my name. He's just lucky, Daniel said, voice low but sharp. A fluke. My mother sighed. Still people are noticing. The silence that followed told me everything. A few weeks later, my father called me into his study. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. He folded his hands. Your mother and I have been talking about the future. That sentence had never meant anything good. I've noticed growth in your business, he continued carefully, and I think it's time we discussed a more formal structure. My stomach tightened. A trust. An LLC. Family protections, he said. If you're open about your finances, I can advise. Daniel has experience with contracts. There it was. They didn't want to understand me. They wanted access. I'm fine, I said quickly, standing. I've got it covered. My father frowned. Margaret, you live under our roof. Utility space, it's not unreasonable to talk about contributions. I nodded slowly, the realization settling like ice. They weren't proud. They were positioning. From that moment on, Daniel stopped pretending. He tagged me in posts about nepotism in tech, made comments at dinner about internet money, joked about how nice it must be to avoid student loans by never moving out. I ignored it until the email arrived, and everything broke. The email came in on a Tuesday morning, tucked between two routine support tickets and a calendar reminder I'd been ignoring. At first glance, it looked harmless. Subject line: quick clarification. It was from one of my oldest clients, an agency I'd worked with for over 2 years. We'd grown together, built trust slowly, the way real partnerships do. I opened it without thinking. Hey, Margaret, quick question. We've been approached by someone representing No Box Legal. They mentioned changes to our licensing structure and suggested we might need to revise our contract. Just wanted to confirm this is legit before moving forward. My stomach dropped. No Box Legal didn't exist. I reread the email slower this time, my pulse creeping into my throat. I replied immediately, asking for more information. They sent a screenshot. The sender's name stared back at me in clean professional font. Daniel Turner. His personal email address. His firm's logo in the signature. A neatly formatted proposal attached. I felt sick. I spent the next 12 hours doing nothing but digging. What I found made my hands shake. Daniel hadn't just contacted one client. He'd reached out to several, some old, some current. He'd positioned himself as my legal representative, claiming I'd asked him to handle the business side while I focused on development. He'd created a single-page website branded as No Box Legal, just polished enough to pass at a glance. And buried inside his proposal was a clause that funneled a percentage of every contract through his firm. My work, my name, my company. Monetized without my consent. I didn't sleep that night. Every memory replayed itself differently. Every comment, every sideways look, every suggestion that he help. This wasn't sudden. It was planned. I confronted him 2 days later in the driveway outside my parents' house. He'd just pulled up in his sleek car, sunglasses on, confidence intact. I stood in front of the hood, forcing him to stop. We need to talk, I said. He sighed. Can it wait? I'm late. I know what you're doing. That got his attention. No Box Legal, I said. You're contacting my clients. He scoffed. It's business, Margaret. Relax. It's fraud. For a split second, his mask slipped. Then it snapped back into place. I was helping, he said. You're not equipped to manage enterprise contracts. I was cleaning things up. You didn't ask, I said. He crossed his arms. Because you would have said no. You always do. You're profiting off my work. And you should be thanking me, he replied coolly. I gave you credibility. That was the moment something inside me went quiet. Not rage. Clarity. He thought he owned me. And that's when I decided I would take everything back slowly, carefully, and without warning. Rock bottom doesn't always feel like falling. Sometimes it feels like standing perfectly still while everything you built leaks away quietly, deliberately, one betrayal at a time. After I confronted Daniel in the driveway, I waited for something. An apology, a retreat, even a half-hearted justification wrapped in family language. None of it came. Instead, he doubled down. Within 2 weeks, 3 more clients reached out asking me to confirm updated terms they'd supposedly discussed with my legal contact. One forwarded an attachment my own contract altered. Contact details replaced. Clauses added. Daniel wasn't guessing. He knew my weak spots. He knew I worked alone. He knew I didn't have legal infrastructure. He knew my clients trusted my silence. And he used it. I spent days sending damage control emails clarifying that Daniel had never represented my company. I issued cease and desist letters, updated contracts, locked permissions, but trust doesn't rebuild on command. One major partner paused their subscription until things were sorted. Another quietly left. I didn't eat for 2 days. I lay in bed staring at my laptop while unread messages piled up. My father knocked on my door once, asking if I was sick or just being dramatic. Daniel texted, "Let me know when you're done with your tantrum." For the first time, I wondered if they were right. Maybe I should have let him in. Maybe I was too stubborn. Maybe staying quiet had finally cost me everything. Then one night I opened my analytics dashboard. Usage was dropping, not crashing, but bleeding. The kind of loss that kills slowly. I stood at the window and saw Daniel in the driveway, laughing with Rebecca, handing her a stack of papers. They weren't worried. They thought I was done. That's when I made a decision. I shut down new signups to No Box. Posted a calm message, temporary pause while we prepare a major upgrade. It bought me time. I hired a real lawyer. Not family, not friendly. A a woman who specialized in IP and asked no emotional questions. Then I rebuilt. I contacted 2 freelancers I trusted. NDA, high pay, one goal, start over. I moved out in May, quietly. No goodbye, no note. When my mother called, I said I needed space. When my father accused me of running away, I didn't respond. Silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was strategy. Rebuilding didn't start with confidence. It started with exhaustion. The first week after I moved into my tiny studio apartment, I slept on a mattress on the floor with my laptop beside me, like a guard dog. The place smelled faintly of fresh paint and emptiness. No family voices bleeding through walls, no judgment disguised as concern. Just silence, and for the first time, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like oxygen. I worked 16-hour days, sometimes more. My meals were whatever I could eat with one hand while typing with the other. My body ached in places I didn't know could ache. My eyes burned constantly. But underneath the fatigue was something sharper. Focus. No box as it existed was wounded, compromised. Even if I fixed every vulnerability, the trust around it would always carry scars. I understood that now. So I made the hardest decision of my professional life. I let it go. Not publicly, not dramatically, quietly. I shut the doors where no one could see and started building something new behind them. The designer I hired stripped everything back to its bones. No familiar colors, no recognizable layouts. The back-end engineer rewrote systems line by line, questioning every assumption I'd ever made. I welcomed it. This time, nothing was sacred just because it had worked before. We weren't patching cracks. We were pouring a new foundation. I named the platform Signalbox because this time it wasn't about productivity alone. It was about clarity, about cutting through noise, distractions, interference, about building something that couldn't be hijacked just because someone thought my silence meant permission. I told no one. Not my parents, not Daniel, not even most of my clients. I reached out only to the people I believed in, the overlooked ones. Indie developers, small creative teams, musicians juggling projects between tours, YouTubers with 3 editors and no structure. I offered them early access. No contracts, no hype, just trust. They came. They stayed. Word spread the way it always does when something actually works quietly, person to person, without spectacle. By July, Signalbox went live. No announcement, no launch party, just a clean site, a clear message, and a platform that worked better than anything I'd ever built. The numbers surprised even me. 3,000 users in the first week, 10,000 by the end of the month. Emails started coming in from investors, from publications, from people who'd never answered me before. I ignored most of them. I didn't want validation anymore. I wanted control. I hired my first full-time employee, then a second. Rented a small co-working space where no one knew my last name or my family history. I started mentoring younger developers who reminded me painfully of myself, the quiet ones who built things no one bothered to ask about. And something shifted inside me. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of being seen. Not because I needed approval, but because I finally knew who I was without it. I wasn't the daughter upstairs anymore. I was the builder, the survivor. Still, no matter how far I moved forward, something tugged at me. Because some chapters don't close just because you walk away. They wait. And as December crept closer, I knew exactly where the final confrontation would happen. Christmas was coming again. And this time I wasn't showing up invisible. For a long time, I told myself I was done. That rebuilding Signalbox was enough. That success, quiet and undeniable, was the cleanest kind of closure. I had my own apartment, my own team, my own rhythm. Days filled with work that mattered. Nights that ended without knots in my stomach. But betrayal has a way of lingering. It shows up in the quiet moments when the screens go dark, when the adrenaline fades, when you're alone with the memory of someone standing in a driveway telling you that you should be grateful they stole from you. I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear, and clarity demands truth. The invitation came in early November, just like it always did. A group text from my mother. Christmas dinner at home this year, Saturday the 23rd. Everyone bring something. I stared at the message longer than necessary, not because I was surprised we never missed Christmas, but because of what it represented. Last year's table, last year's comments, last year's silence that let everything happen. I typed back 2 words. I'll be there. No emojis, no explanations, just confirmation. This wasn't about revenge. There would be no shouting match, no dramatic exit, no spectacle designed to humiliate. I wasn't interested in flipping the table. I wanted the truth to sit on it. Preparation became my focus. The first step was evidence. I hired a digital forensics consultant, a woman named Ava Morales, who specialized in tracing unauthorized use of intellectual property. I gave her everything: emails, contracts, archived screenshots of the fake no-box legal site Daniel had created, even the vague timeline of when clients first reached out, confused. Ava didn't ask why. She just worked. The second step was visibility. For months, I'd allowed people, especially my family, to believe I'd vanished. That signal box was just another quiet experiment, that I was still figuring things out. I changed that carefully. I gave 2 interviews to mid-sized tech publications. Nothing flashy, no comeback story, just honest conversations about rebuilding, about boundaries, about learning the cost of silence. One headline read, "Founder rebuilds after internal betrayal. Stronger. Smarter, secure." I didn't share it. I didn't need to. The internet does its own work. The third step was allies. Not for confrontation, but for confirmation. People who knew my work. People who'd been there before success made things complicated. One of them, a creator named Tara Nguyen, ran a small but respected YouTube channel reviewing productivity tools. She'd been an early supporter of NoBox. I gave her exclusive early access to Signalbox's newest update. She loved it. Her review went live a week before Christmas. I checked the analytics. Daniel had watched it. The final step was the simplest. I bought a small matte black presentation box. Clean, minimal. Inside it, a USB drive. On it, a single video I'd recorded late one night in my studio. No branding, no background music. Just me, calmly explaining what happened. The fake legal site, the unauthorized contracts, the damage. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. I wrapped the box with a red ribbon and placed it in my bag. I wasn't sure who would open it, but I knew where I'd leave it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't confront someone directly. It's let the truth speak when you finally stop protecting them from it. Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in snow. The streets were quiet, softened by white drifts and warm window lights that made everything look gentler than it actually was. My parents' house appeared exactly the same as it always had, perfectly decorated, perfectly composed like a postcard that never aged. I parked a few houses down and sat in my car for a moment, hands resting calmly in my lap. I wasn't nervous. That surprised me. I walked in carrying only one thing, the small matte black box. The smell of familiar food hit me immediately. My mother's casserole, cinnamon, pine from the tree. My father stood near the living room brandy, already in hand. Daniel was there, of course, leaning against the counter, confident as ever. Rebecca stood beside him, polished, observant. She smiled when she saw me. Margaret. Daniel kissed my cheek like nothing had ever happened. We sat, we ate, we talked about safe things. Promotions, travel plans, market conditions. Eventually, as it always did, the conversation turned toward me. So Daniel said, casually swirling his wine, "What are you working on these days?" I smiled softly. "I'm building." Rebecca tilted her head. "Still, always." Dinner ended. Plates were cleared. The lights dimmed. And then my mother noticed the box. "Oh," she said, lifting it from beneath the tree. "Who's this for?" I stood, took it from her hands. "For everyone." Daniel laughed lightly. "What is this, a presentation?" "In a way," I said. I plugged the USB into the TV. The screen flickered. My face appeared calm, steady, unmistakable. I spoke clearly, simply. I explained the fake legal site, the altered contracts, the emails, the damage. No dramatics, just truth. Rebecca's smile faded. Daniel stood up halfway through. "Turn it off." I didn't. The screen changed archived web pages, email headers, a recorded call Daniel didn't know existed, claiming he managed my licensing. Silence filled the room like smoke. My father set his glass down slowly. Rebecca looked at Daniel. "You told me she asked you to help." Daniel said nothing. "You lied to me," she said. He tried to explain. He always did. She grabbed her coat and left without another word. Daniel followed. The door closed. My parents stayed seated. Finally, my father spoke. "Why didn't you tell us?" I met his eyes. "Because you wouldn't have listened." He didn't argue. I turned the TV off. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't demand apologies. I left. Outside, the snow muffled every sound. The house behind me glowed warmly, like a place I no longer belonged to and no longer needed to. Daniel never contacted me again. Neither did Rebecca. A few months later, clients returned. Quiet apologies, quiet repairs. Signalbox kept growing. And for the first time in my life, I slept well. Not because I'd won, but because I'd stopped shrinking to fit a family that only valued me when I was useful. Some people think revenge is about destruction. It isn't. It's about rebuilding yourself so completely that they can't recognize the version of you that no longer needs them.